and welcome to a new series of Education Join the Dots, our podcast covering all things assessment and practice. We hope that you all enjoyed the summer break and have come back feeling refreshed and ready for a new academic year. We are, of course, GL Assessment or GL Education, depending on where you are in the world, a Renaissance company providing formative, standardised assessments in the UK and Ireland and over 100 countries worldwide. Now, you may have noticed a slight change to the name of our podcast. However, as always, we'll be discussing all things assessment and practice, as well as addressing some of those prevalent topics from the world of education. So we really hope you enjoy tuning into our second series. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Sophie Riley, Marketing Manager at Renaissance, and lately I've had the amazing pleasure of collaborating with Andy Small, our Assessment Specialist for Numeracy and Mathematics. Together, we've been working extremely hard to bring our brand new assessment, the new group maths test, to life. With over a decade of experience in education, it's something I'm deeply passionate about. I truly believe in the power of reading and learning and stand by the saying, education and knowledge is the one thing that can never be taken away from you. Now, if you listened to our July episode, you'll remember we introduced our new segment, Heard It in the Staff Room. This is where we share your voice notes of the hot topics of conversation which have set tongues wagging, either during those PPA meetings, at the end of the day over a pile of unmarked books, or just in those busy break and lunch times. Here are just a couple of the voice notes we received from our listeners over the summer.
Hi, I'm Michael Brown. I've been a primary school teacher for the last 7 years. I'm currently working in a school in North Manchester, and it is difficult to get math specialists to become teachers. I think because mainly there's so many industries and so many jobs in which, having a background in maths can be really lucrative, especially in the private sector. I think it's really difficult to attract those kinds of people to teaching. And so historically, we've seen very few people with a maths background, especially in primary school teaching. However, I think more recently, I have seen a few more people who have had a career in some sort of, maths-based background, whether it's like finance or business, and then later in life come to teaching. I know of at least a couple of people who have done that. So while I think that has been the case in the past, I think that there might be a little bit of a shift. Primarily because I think it's seen as though those careers can, while they're financially very good, I think perhaps people tend to think that maybe they're not doing something really worthwhile, and teaching perhaps fills that kind of gap.
Hi, my name is Damien Warren and I am a maths teacher at a secondary school in Leeds called Cardinal Heenan. So one of my challenges that I face in maths is when pupils come to the subject with a negative mindset or having experienced sort of negative influences from past years, or that parents sort of have already labelled them as they can't achieve in maths because obviously it's hereditary, and that because parents aren't good at maths, then neither will their kids. And that's probably the biggest challenge. A lot of the pupils that I sort of teach, do have their struggles in maths, and most of them are down to that lack of confidence. But the biggest rewarding aspects of my job is taking that lack of confidence or that negative mindset and turning it around. And when you can show kids that they can succeed, and that with work, dedication and a positive mindset, things will start to click, and then you see those light bulb moments happening in class is incredibly rewarding. I'm sure that's why so many teachers got into the profession in the first place. So that's it from me. Hopefully that's okay. Many thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for sending in your contributions. It's always such a delight to hear from you all. So I'm especially excited about today's episode because it features something I've been working closely on with Andy, and that is the launch of the new group maths test. As someone who personally struggled with maths in school, it almost feels ironic, but incredibly rewarding that nearly 10 years later, I'm helping to bring a new, innovative maths product to life. This tool is designed to support every student, whether they find maths challenging or not. Some of you might already be familiar with NGRT, which is the new group reading test, and building on its success, we're introducing the new group maths test, or NGMT for short. Now, this is a digital, adaptive, and termly assessment that measures maths attainment and provides teachers with valuable insights to better support each student's learning journey. Now, let's dive into our data spotlight, and here are Darren and Sadie with all the details on NGMT.
Darren, I am so excited to be talking to you about this today. NGMT, otherwise known as the New Group Maths Test, has just been released, and we obviously couldn't miss the opportunity to tell our listeners all about it.
Absolutely, Sadie, me too. And there'll be lots of customers out there already using our new group reading test. This is a fantastic addition to the series of assessments. We've produced it in such a short time. We could talk about it all day, but basically NGMT is a digital termly assessment of mathematical attainment, providing school staff with key insights into learners' knowledge, skills and understanding of mathematics.
And one of the many fantastic things about the assessment is that it's adaptive. So that means that the question difficulty will adjust in response to learners' answers as they make their way through the assessment. So not only will different questions from a variety of curriculum domains be presented in a rolling sequence, the assessment itself will adjust in difficulty to provide appropriate levels of challenge at all times for all learners.
And as with all of our digital assessments, once the learners have completed the assessment, in this case it takes around 45 to 60 minutes, schools will have access to a huge wealth of data, including in the new style reports. Schools will get insights into learners' overall math scores as well as domain-specific results. And these are in the areas of using and applying number facts and reasoning and problem solving.
And not only that, schools will also gain incredibly helpful insights into the areas of number and algebra. And for children in years 3 to 7, you'll also get insights into the areas of fractions, decimals, percentages, proportion and ratio, and measurement, geometry and statistics. So all of this information, combined with the key data metrics, which are available in these new reports, will provide you with a holistic view of each child and group's mathematical attainment.
If you want to learn more about NGMT, please do check out our website. We've got a host of key resources there to help you make the most out of the new group maths test.
And as always, do get in touch with us for more information about NGMT if you are eager to find out more.
Now, who better to discuss maths in the classroom than someone who's been there themselves? Andy Small, our assessment specialist for numeracy and mathematics, spent nearly 16 years as a maths specialist, teaching in both primary and independent prep schools. So, Andy, can you tell us a little bit about the issues that you faced as a maths teacher and subject leader and what schools are dealing with today?
I think that's a really good place to start, Sophie. I was a maths leader for the vast majority of my 16 years in schools. I really enjoyed the challenges of teaching the subject in a way that I hope inspired the young people in my care. Leading the subject wasn't easy, though, even with such driven and passionate colleagues as I was fortunate enough to work with. So there were budgeting limitations, significant disparities in sort of levels of staff confidence and experience in the teaching of maths. They were two considerations, and I think it's often the case that the primary staff room in its teachers sort of reflects sometimes the sea of faces that you have in the classrooms of those same people teaching. You got some very confident, you got others who are not so. I know that last year Renaissance did a survey of UK teaching staff, and it revealed that I think it was 3 in 10 teachers confessed to feeling anxious about solving maths problems in front of their classes, for example. That's a pretty significant percentage, right? So there are challenges. I don't think it's getting any easier in schools either. We know that there are more challenges where school finances are concerned, ongoing difficulties with attendance, especially in secondary schools. I think that's making the day-to-day teaching tougher, where students might miss bits of content that might be important to future sessions. I was looking at some stats the other day for those who were considered to be persistently absent across years 10 and 11. And there was a difference, something like 84%, I think it was, of students who were rarely absent in years 10 and 11 secured their GCSE pass. So there's a grade 4 plus at GCSE maths. I think the number was down below 50% when children's absence hit 10% of sessions. So less than 90% attendance across both years. So that's a significant thing. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to rear its head a little bit. Nationally, end of Key Stage 2 maths attainment isn't yet back to where it was in 2019. But then GCSE results are are better than 5 years ago if you're looking at the numbers of students achieving grade 4 or above. So maybe that says something. In my role today, I often hear colleagues speaking of the challenges of a really dense maths curriculum. That's under review now, of course, with the new government. Increasingly complex needs of their students, staffing, purchasing of maths resources, the availability of high quality maths CPD, that's all impacted by further budget squeezes. Yeah, and I mean, this isn't in any way an exhaustive list. So time poor teachers and maths leaders, as rewarding and as wonderful as the profession is, they're dealing with a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So how would you say that the new group maths test can help address some of those issues that you've just spoken about then?
I'm not going to pretend that GL is able to address all of the things that schools and trusts are balancing. If we think about teaching as a bit of a marathon, I don't think we can help with the first mile. I don't think we'll be able to do anything about the difficult last mile, but maybe we can help with the 24 miles in between. So when designing the new group maths test, there were kind of two key drivers, really. The first one was try to ensure as personalised and stress-free a test experience as possible for each and every individual learner. The second was to put the most useful information in the hands of teachers, so that whether they were experienced, whether they were new to it, whether they were confident or lacking confidence, whether they were experienced with data or not as happy with looking at data, they could make the decisions, and it could help inform their decision making such that the maths learning and progress was facilitated in the best way. So, for example, at times of transition, whether that be between year groups or maybe going from a primary to a secondary school, NGMT can quickly provide an overview of a student's maths attainment as well as their areas of relative strength and challenge. That makes it easier to group children, and we believe to identify those who may be priorities for interventions or focus groups when you're teaching specific skills. So being able to identify early in the academic year which areas individual children need help in should hopefully mean that those ongoing checks of attainment and progress as children work towards the end of key stage or transition to new classes, new schools, the benefit of that is felt later when you reveal some hopefully significant good news stories. One of the other big use cases we think for NGMT will be for screening. So the British Dyslexia Association suggests that an average of 1 or 2 pupils in every UK classroom experiences developed dyscalculia. So that's 6% of all people in the UK are considered to be kind of number dyslexic. We really hope that NGMT can support teachers to identify any individuals who might be at risk, highlight the need for further exploration, for example. And we've developed an interactive reporting tool as well. So the idea of that is that we bring the scores to life by helping schools to get the information they want, and that they have some options in terms of how they display that data. So the report provides all of the usual metrics, standard age score, stay 9 information, that is across curriculum domains as well as overall, breakdowns by different groups, different student demographics, but our enhanced NGMT reporting hub hopefully makes it easier for the user to sort of view and interpret the data through the lens of national comparisons and just look at it how they want to, really. If I think more about some of the solutions to the challenges that are faced by schools and staff in them, I think there's loads of extra value that NGMT can bring. There was an EEF, so the Education Endowment Foundation, study that was released in June, and it was secondary focused, but it identified 4 key areas for priority, really, in developing effective maths practice. The first of those was teacher skills and expertise, and we hope that sort of valuable, easy to interpret information, getting that in the hands of specialist and non-specialist teachers particularly should help to that end. The second point was about targeted interventions and support. So if interventions are going to be put in place, then hopefully the use of the data from NGMT, perhaps use of our Freckle, so Renaissance's Freckle, personalised practice materials, they serve as a really great way of engaging students in follow-up after assessment. Impactful practice was the third point. And of course, that's what a lot of schools come to us for in terms of the data, to show that outcomes reflect positively what is happening in the classroom. and evidence that. And then the fourth point was program engagement. So one of the barriers for students when maths testing is concerned is often this one-size-fits-all approach. Everybody's sitting the same questions in the same order, and there's merit to that. Of course there is. That's a really true and fair comparison, but it doesn't necessarily make for a great experience for everybody. So NGMT removes that through its adaptive algorithm, and the children then see test content that's presented to them as is sort of perceived to be consistent with their levels of capability.
Wow. It must have been quite a big project to create NGMT then.
Yeah. So I remember it was back in 2017, I think, that it was first proposed. And I remember then being asked questions about the potential for a new maths test when I was a user of GL's assessments in schools. And it was just a seed of an idea, and here I am now talking with you about it. Yeah, quite a big project. When I left the classroom to join GL assessment, it was with a pretty heavy heart, to be honest, but I was very quickly encouraged by the fact that all the conversations and all the decisions that seemed to be made genuinely seem to hold individual children and teachers at the heart of them, and that's continued with this project. It's been the same throughout. We tried to ensure that the test experience is one that ensures challenge for those kids that demand it, as well as scaffolding for those that might find maths more difficult. We thought really carefully about the post-testing content for teachers. We know that many of the classroom practitioners engaging with NGMT won't necessarily be maths specialists, and maybe not sort of what could be termed data savvy, I suppose. So we've that ever-evolving reporting hub that I was talking about. Yeah, and we hope to deliver students' results in a relatively simple way. We'll be changing it over time. We'll be evolving it with schools' feedback. That's really important to us. So the way it appears now is a significant step forward compared with our other sort of existing reporting and test-wise. But we know from speaking with people in schools that making the information accessible and in a way that does the heavy lifting, if you like, of interpreting results, that's so useful when you put it in the context of sort of the overall workload. So that's why we'll be constantly reviewing and iterating within that reporting hub. The aim of sort of getting the right information into the hands of the right people so that the right support can be given to the right children. So yeah, I don't know whether that's actually answered your question. The process of creating NGMT, that's involved so many people. It's been a genuine team effort. I don't think I even began to appreciate what it took to create the tests that are across GL assessment, Renaissance, GL education when I was working in schools. Item writing, item review, far from a straightforward process. The need to ensure consistency with contemporary practices in classrooms, suitably differentiated questions. Then there's the reality that some of those questions simply won't work. They won't work as sort of written out on paper when they're put on a digital platform, for example, or perhaps when they're presented to children as part of trialing, they don't give rise to the sorts of results that we'd expect. So there's loads there. And when we create new test materials, we also recruit schools to support us. That's something we welcome any school to be involved in. So we literally can't have too many trial or standardization schools, but it is a significant undertaking to coordinate that trialing at several stages of development, particularly with something like NGMT, where we've got multiple versions of the test to be used at different times of the year. So essentially, we've created 3 different tests here sitting under that NGMT umbrella. And that can all only happen once the code's been written, the questions are available in a format consistent with a final test. It's a huge job for our tech and design teams. There's stats analysis, platform developments, etc., etc., and so much other stuff, reporting, training, guidance for schools and administration, even, Sophie, marketing. So yeah, it's been quite a big undertaking, one that's meant we've got an assessment that we're really pleased to be able to offer schools right now.
And that adaptivity that Sadie and Darren mentioned earlier, that must make for quite a unique experience for children when they sit the test, right?
Yeah, I think it really does. It was really the driving force behind NGMT. Some of our listeners might be familiar with the new group reading or spelling tests. Fundamentally, the adaptive algorithm works in much the same way as for those assessments. Things are slightly different in NGMT. given the greater focus on knowledge and facts rather than skills, as well as skills. We use the student's age at the beginning of the academic term to determine the appropriate starting point, but the test does quickly respond to sort of correct and incorrect answers to move those children onto the most appropriate content to offer them the most appropriate degree of difficulty. I was in a nearby secondary academy last term. I was observing some students taking NGMT, and one of the boys in the class talked about how he'd enjoyed the range of question types, how he'd felt like he was being challenged because he knew he was a fairly decent mathematician, and that adaptivity had been really clear to him within the test. One of his friends turned to me at one point and said, "Is this supposed to be really hard?" And when we chatted more about it, it turns out that she was also very competent in maths, and I think she left the room feeling pretty positive about the whole thing, and the fact that she'd spent her time doing something really worthwhile that had actually really quite challenged her, but she sort of seemed to rise to that. And yeah, where adaptivity is concerned, I remember listening to one of our previous episodes. I think it was about the removal of Key Stage 1 statutory testing, and Jonathan Bishop, the CEO of Cornerstone Academy Trust, he was talking about how modern adaptive tests adjust their questioning to the needs of the child. He was really clear that such an approach to testing can sort of remove quite a lot of stress and anxiety from a more formal assessment situation. And I think he was talking in terms of children being assessed in a more targeted, more supported way. And that in turn makes the tool that you're using yet more accurate. So I think that's what you'd want from any assessment tool. And hopefully that's what we've created here.
Wow, thank you so much, Andy. That was incredibly informative. And yeah, hope to hear more from you soon.
Thank you, Sophie. Yes, always good to talk maths and NGMT.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Education Joining the Dots. If you'd like any more information from us, as always, please head to our training and support site, support.gl-assessment.co.uk or support.gl-education.com, depending on where you are in the world. You can also tweet us using the handle @GL_assessment or @GL_education and email us if you'd like to know more or contribute. The address is podcast@gl-assessment.co.uk. We would love to hear more of your Heard It in the Staff and submissions. If there's a burning topic you'd like us to cover in a future episode, all you need to do is send us a WhatsApp voice note with your contribution to 07917 516 515, and we'll try and include as many of these as possible. Please do also follow and rate our podcast, share with your friends and colleagues, and subscribe to be notified when new episodes become available. We'll be back again in November, but in the meantime, look out for a new episode of the Renaissance Space podcast next month from our friends at Renaissance. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and join us again next time. Hello, it's GL here. We would love to hear your views on the Education Joining the Dots podcast, and we'd be very grateful if you could take a few minutes of your time to give us your feedback by following the link to our survey. You'll find this in the episode description on your device, and all feedback is welcome as it will help us to ensure that this podcast meets your needs.